Yeah.
Okay, so if you're editing this, let's. Hello, and welcome to that Eurovision site, Eurovision with a Slice of Life. I'm Angus, professional he, him pronoun user, and today I am joined by.
I'm Shiloh. I also technically use he, him professionally, but my coworkers don't seem to agree. That was great. That was a great sentence you said. I love that.
I'm just happy to make you laugh. So, before we get started on today's episode, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm okay.
That is very
I'm all
okay
right.
to
I'm
hear.
hanging out. How are you?
Also doing okay and very much ready to get into this episode and, to be fair, just have it recorded.
Oh yeah.
And the topic of today's episode, or YouTube video, or wherever you are experiencing this, is HRT Dora. So the Croatian national selection for Eurovision, which was held on Super Saturday, which was a very, very busy Saturday for anyone and everyone Eurovision related.
Yes.
So a very, very quick rundown for the results of HRT Dora is that, of course, Let 3 won with Mama Ch. I think I pronounced that correctly enough. They had landslide. They won the jury by a fairly small margin, but then they absolutely landslid the televote. In second place was, I think it's fair to say, fan favorite Harmonia Dissonance with Nevera Lele. Third were Detour with Master Blaster. Fourth were the Spitters with Lost and Found, and fifth was Dabir Kejo Returnee, who would have represented Croatia in 2020. This time he tried it with Angels and Demons. And then we had 18 acts in total, so I'm not going to read them all out because we only have limited time here.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of acts.
Yes. So to start off with, what do you think of the winning song and how do you think it will perform in Liverpool?
Oh, I have. Well, I don't like it. Um, I I am not usually a like I don't want to call this a joke entry because I don't think that it is, but I don't like this sort of style of performance, really. I don't like this sort of style of music. It doesn't feel very cohesive. It's not something that I like to listen to. It's not something that I like to watch, frankly. I don't have anything against it ideologically. It is just so extremely not for me, and it has been since Super Saturday when I heard the song for the first time. Um, that having been said, it might do okay at Eurovision. I mean, it's I don't know too much about the song, but at least some of it is making fun of Putin a little bit, right? And so in the current climate, that might get them televote points. At least enough to qualify. I don't think they would do well in the final. The jury doesn't usually go for that sort of thing. Um, I guess it could do okay. I don't see it doing like awesomely, you know. But those are also thoughts colored by me really not liking the song. So those are my thoughts. How about you?
That is very fair. Yes, it does have an anti-Putin message. Specifically, Let 3 are a very politically active, or at least politically charged punk band, for better and for worse.
Okay.
They have, I would say that besides their name recognition, because they're very much an established act in Croatia, the
Mm.
messaging perhaps also did help them even further landslide the televote because it was just such a massive margin. So I would, and also on top of that, why I think it might do well in Liverpool, at least in the semi-final, is it does slot in with that mid to late aughts televote only Eurovision era. Like it does
It's
feel like
very
it's,
Verka Serduchka,
yes,
in a way.
in a way, and there are a bunch of other acts from that time that performed all over, that ended up finishing all over the scoreboard, but that are considered to have done fairly well and definitely are going to struggle. It's going to struggle more in the final when there is a jury involved, even though at the same time it could have the advantage among some juries of also again that sort of name recognition, something we have, and just the cultural connections between some countries. We have seen them like, oh, we know this band, we know that they are popular to some degree, so they are deserving from a commercial point of view, which is something the juries look at in Eurovision. It could pick up a couple of points here and there, but yes, it will definitely, relatively speaking, overperform in the semi-final and overperform the semi-final, underperform in the grand final. The song itself, it's a bit of a mess, and that's it's supposed to be, but it is this specific. I'm fair. I quite enjoy punk, but I do enjoy more specific, different types of punk than this. This is this 90s-esque, deliberately fully off-putting kind of style that, I mean, it's off-putting on purpose. And then that is active artistic choice that I can appreciate and even enjoy at times. There are bands that do that I do enjoy. For me, it doesn't quite work. For a while, it did work, but between two things, it stopped working. I listened to it a few more times, and after a while, it just became a bit too much for me. So overexposure, but also, and as many viewers and listeners of that Eurovision site will know, we have spirited discussions in our own chats and in our own time among all the team members about the song and everything. And I had a very spirited discussion about the song with Isabel, and Isabel sadly couldn't be here for this recording, but they made some very important points about the lyrics of the song. And I do want to say something that I asked Isabel to like give me something to say because they couldn't be here. This is what they said. As a person with, speaking as Isabel here, quoting, start quote, as a person with multiple mental illnesses, framing the atrocities committed by dictators as symptoms of mental illness, stupidity, or neurodivergence is deeply problematic, and this song is entirely that. People fling terms like psychopath around as insults, and all it does is further stigmatize and dehumanize all of us with mental illnesses and neurodivergences. The lyrics and performance of Mamache make these associations that are incredibly harmful when we are much, much more likely to experience violence and struggle to access support than to launch missiles. And I do think it's important to keep in mind, of course, the lyrics are, end quote, by the way, end quote. It's important to keep that in mind. I do think for many people that will not be as obvious, besides the existence of issues of ableism in general. There's also the lyrics are in Croatian, so people might not pick up on that. They're more likely to pick up on the anti-Putin messaging because that is fairly notable. Also, just in the performance in general, we saw like one of the band members was, and it's very vaguely whatever we think of Russia code. We had this one guy who was sort of dressed like a Rasputin type, and then we had the singer sort of more dressed like a Stalin-esque with the mustache as well situation. There's a lot going on with the performance, but
yes,
and with the song, and
they also have this sort of like drag makeup thing going on too, don't they?
Yeah, it's somewhere between drag and, of course, sometimes where you draw the line between drag makeup and other styles of makeup is also a question.
Yeah, just
but
like heavier makeup than one would expect.
Yes,
I suppose I shouldn't say drag, but
no,
like
but
heavier makeup.
I would say
Yes,
there's a
yeah,
feminizing
feminizing.
hint to how they are presenting themselves partially on stage. And of course, there you then also always have to question, especially with punk bands, is like how much of it is a joke, how do you need to read it, etc. And as many punk bands do, when you question them about that, they are going to give you a vague answer because that is the kind of provocation that they're going to do, complicating matters further. You need to be reading between the lines, and sometimes the lines are just very unclear and there isn't much space to actually read anything. That said, I know multiple people that also think this song is an absolute bop, including some members of our team. Moving on. So besides the winning song, there were 17 other songs in the final, it was a one-night final, national final. What other songs in Dora stood out to you this year?
So I haven't seen any of the other live performances, but I did listen to a few songs pre-show because I was doing interviews with the artists. And I think my favorite of those was Barbara Munoz's entry, Putem Snova. Um, Barbara Munoz, who is actually returning to Dora after over 10 years. I listened actually to quite a bit of her discography while I was writing up her interview, and I really enjoyed it. It's not the sort of thing that I would listen to, every day, but I liked it and I found it, sort of musically interesting in a kind of Eurovision jury way. Um I would have liked to I guess I would have liked to see that do well, but she obviously didn't make the top 5. I think that was my favorite of what I listened to pre-show.
That's definitely a good choice. I live tweeted the national final, and I had listened to the songs beforehand, and I had a few standouts. But overall, especially live, a lot of the performances just it made a lot of these songs click for me. I genuinely had a good time listening to all the entries, especially live. Um, my winner ahead of the night, like for many Eurovision fans, was Nevera Lele by Harmonia Dissonance. Now, much has been made on Eurovision Twitter about how they performed it. I think, what are we going to expect from 6 trained singers that they're alone on the stage and they just need to sing it? They're not going to do as much dancing as you might expect with how it musically sounds, the song. But I think if they would have gone to Eurovision, and they might still in the future, they're still a fairly, they're not a new band by any means, but they're still, they still have plenty of time to go to Eurovision if they want to. Especially Dora has a history of returning artists. They could still do great. My favorite on the night, though, and now also looking back, was Master Blaster by Detour. It's this great semi-80s, like it combines many things. There's some ska elements in there, there's some Talking Heads energy also with how they were all dressed in those frankly very ugly on purpose gray suits. It was just a very fun performance of a very fun song. It just worked really well and really appeals to me. But yeah, there were just a lot of good songs. As you mentioned, Barbara Munoz had a good song. If you I was also quite partial to something like in a weird way, I was very partial to Maya Grgic's "I Still Live." It's a it was a solidly performed ballad. Um, I've decided that opening your song "I Still Live" with the lines "I am dead, I am no longer alive, yet I live" is just such an act of courage that I cannot help but just admire it. Like that is genuinely an admirable thing. And then she just performed it really well on the stage and does. But when you first read those lines, you're like, "Is this unintentional comment?" But then you know, no, there is a very serious matter at hand here, and does work emotionally in the end as well, which I just love to see. So it was all in all, like, entry wise, it was pretty strong. We also had the iconic "Bye Bye Blonde" by Marianne Drakovic, which I think is worth a shout out. Or the where what was their song called again? Top of the Pops had a song. Yeah, Top of the Pops featuring Mario Fajfrekovic. I don't know how to pronounce that for sure. They have Putovania. That was also a very that I would call it entry camp, like in the most positive Eurovision adjacent way. But it was definitely fun. So yeah, if you haven't listened to the Dora songs yet, or it's slipped back of your mind, definitely jump back in. All the performances are up on the official Dora YouTube channel, so they're easy enough to find. Speaking of the contest, how did you feel about the contest as a whole? You said that you haven't watched as much of the live stuff, but from what you've heard and what you did see.
I, I really don't know. It's hard for me to speak on this because again, I didn't really follow the show live. I was doing it was Super Saturday, and I think I was maybe doing maybe it was Melfest. I don't remember. Um, we've all done so many at this point. Um, but I was live tweeting something else, and so I couldn't watch. But I think, like, generally, and I think this is something that we at the site have that is maybe a majority of opinion of other writers at the site, that I generally enjoy like smaller national finals. I feel like 18 was a little bit much. Um that's really all of the opinions that I have about the format of the show, is that like if you have more than like 12 songs, I think it just sort of gets hard to differentiate everything beyond a certain point. Or well, not differentiate, but like really form an opinion about the songs, because everything just kind of comes at you.
Definitely. I'm always in opinion with that in opinion of usually the broadcaster picks the songs for the national final, and at least some of the people responsible for picking the songs are also then in the jury on the night itself, which to me feels like double dipping. That's not necessarily a bad thing,
Mhm.
but I do think that you can then pre-select just these are the 10 strongest songs or whatever, or that Dora could have benefited from having semifinals. They did have like this preview show now where every artist got to introduce themselves, which I think was a very good addition, just on a principle level, even though I obviously didn't see that. But I do think that shortening the final in terms of number of acts wouldn't have hurt because, for example, in the jury vote, we had 5 songs that didn't even crack double digits in the points for the jury vote. And I do feel that's a shame for both the artists because they start feeling unappreciated, even though they still did a great job most of the time. Well, at the same time, it does also feel like, okay, these songs were never going to win and you selected them. But that there's of course also this waiting you have to do between are you as a broadcaster trying to promote the local or regional music scene, or are you trying to pick a song for Eurovision? And where you draw the line is a very tricky decision to make and depends on many preferences that can also vary from year to year.
And I
Uh,
think the Dora artists that I talked to did definitely seem to take sort of like the first opinion, where it's like we just want to promote the Croatian music scene to the international viewers who are watching. I think Barbara Munoz said something along those lines, and Krasimir Buric from Krasuj Kisela Kisha. But Krasimir Buric said something about like, oh, like I want to showcase the Croatian music scene and things like that. And so I think, like, in terms of that, it's it's fine and fun to have an 18 song lineup, but it's for Eurovision, and if you're voting on the song for Eurovision, it gets a little harder to have higher numbers.
I think in general that's where you want to look into some form of semi-final, or at least that you have multiple nights going on in some form or another. But as such, the show was pretty solid. I do feel the Dora stage was actually like it felt there was proper money put in the show, and that was also then shown in the performances. It felt like a very much a complete package of a televised national final that just was competently made, and the artists did get the opportunity to really do their own staging, be it like more focused on the costuming or just the setup on the stage or what the graphics did on the screen or on the floor. Like there was genuinely a lot of effort and time put in, and that was also really visible to me, and that I really appreciated. Um, I wasn't necessarily a fan of the hosts, but I'm not Croatian. I do not speak Croatian, so most of the jokes flew straight over my head, except if they said like a few words that I could understand. When they start singing TikTok, the 2021 entry, I could understand that. That's sort of where my limits were. The interval acts, it was great to have just one interval act. I will start with that. Also, it was great. It was the 1994 Dora winner and Croatian and entry, Tony Chetinsky. He performed, but it was a lot. It was very long. He did like 5 or 6 songs, I think.
Hmm.
And then there was an outbreak. And then somebody else shortly appeared on stage so the host could do a joke about there already being too much time spent on the interval act. And I think that kind of joke where you do a certain thing and then poke fun at it, but just saying like, "Oh, look, we did that thing, but we can joke about it as well." That rarely lands for me. It usually just gives me the feeling of, okay, so you also know you could have approached this differently, even though everyone in the arena was, or stage, or wherever it exactly was held, loved Tony's performance. I thought it was like, I don't know his music, but I was entertained. I was pretty happy with it. So I think just the show can be tightened up a little bit more, but that's again something that the broadcast needs to experiment with, and I think that's also something they need to keep considering. With, if like, Croatia has had a bit of a struggle with Eurovision recently, and Sharon and I, we're in agreement that this year they'll probably qualify to the final, which will be a great achievement for Croatia. That being said, I just tightening up the show a little and maybe introducing some form of semi-final or a longer national final format might help Croatia qualify consistently. Although I would say that the top three songs, so Let 3, Harmony of Dissonance, and Detour, they all would have had a decent shot at getting into the Eurovision final. So I do think that we're in sort of that improving line of they are picking the right songs, and those songs are also getting good results in the national final itself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do want to see Croatia in the Eurovision final. They've had a lot of good entries, and a lot of the time they pick something that's at least partially in Croatian, so there's also a nice bit of language diversity in there, which I'm always a big fan of as well.
Same.
So yeah, that basically brings us to the end of this recording, I think, already. Like that song, actually. I know that's not a popular opinion in general, but I quite like it.
It's not a style of music that's for me.
It's a good. That song was very Euro coded. Montenegro 2012 or whatever.
See that.
Rambo Amadeus,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was also the music video that just did this, we're doing a new support kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That also gave that vibe, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're editing this, let's yeah, I would just want to say that, yeah, I had a good time tweaking this, and look, as anyone knows, I've ragged on Sanremo and how long it lasts for so many times. Also watched the Una Voce per San Marino episode, which is also Shiloh and me, where we do also have some complaints about the length of the San Marinese national final.
Yeah,
So,
I had a lot of complaints.
so me saying that I want the Croatian national final to be longer genuinely means that I had a good time with the Croatian national final, and I just want I want the songs and the artists to just have more breathing space, and it also gives potential opportunity to maybe up to 24, but it's 2 semi-finals of 12 that then get cut down to 12 songs in the final or something like that. But I'm literally saying, Croatia, I want to hear more of your music. I'm a fan of your music, and yeah, I just want to hear and see more of your delightful performances, both in your own country and at Eurovision.
Yeah.
And yeah, that brings us to the end, actually. So thank you so much for listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share with all your friends, all the good stuff. Hit the notification bell to never miss any upload. And we're doing plenty of uploads, so it's always good to keep an eye on those. You can follow that Eurovision site over on the tag That Euro site on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can follow That Euro podcast on Facebook and Twitter, and yeah,
Instagram.
And Instagram, yes. That Euro podcast is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and can also be found and listened to via thateurovisionsite.com. I think those are all our socials.
I think that's everything.
Yes, you can find my and Shadow's socials also on the website and all the other people. So if you have a complaint, you know where to find me. At me. I will not fight you, but feel free to at me. I like the attention.
Send me hate mail on Tumblr. That hasn't happened to me in like years.
Oh, that's been so, yeah. My question.
I think actually probably not since the last time I was in the Eurovision fandom was the last time when I was 16 was the last time I got hate mail on Tumblr, I think.
Send us some anonymous messages on Tumblr. Both our Tumblrs are also can be found there in our profile. So yeah. But anyway, Shiloh, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
and goodbye.
Goodbye.